The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Lining up Adrian Noble, and here it comes. Hula kick, connects.
Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Game Day. Starting off with some good news, and that is, I believe, the news that broke, I want to say it was yesterday, or maybe even the day before, but Damar Hamlin has been released from the hospital. He is doing fine now, according to family. It was such a lengthy process in seeing, his recovery, but we're happy to hear that, that man is doing well, and just hoping the best for him and his safety and overall health. Really glad to see that. And then we had a really kind of crazy week in the NFL, as it's the final week, and also what's it called? A lot of playoff seeding was on the line here. We needed Philly to win one game to get the 1 seed and the NFC East. I can't remember because I know at the current time San Francisco had the lead over the Vikings because of their conference record. I don't know if Minnesota had won and the Niners had lost, if that would have changed any seeding. But And of course the AFC had a ton of stuff shaping up. The 7th seed needed to be decided. The AFC South championship, the AFC South division title needed to be decided. If the Bengals had lost to the Ravens, there would have been a coin toss to see where their wild card game would have been played at if they matched up against each other, But so, let's get right into it. Obviously, we had 2 games on Saturday. We had the Chiefs going against the Raiders. Chiefs obviously just blew them out, 31-13. Chiefs are the 1 seed. Titans and Jaguars. This was a real interesting game, solely because the joke that I was throwing around was like, dang, neither team wants to win this division because of how they were playing. But then I believe Jacksonville got a pick 6, I want to say, or they recovered a fumble. Something happened. There was a turnover, I think. I wasn't really paying too much attention to the game because I was doing other stuff because it was my birthday. But, Jacksonville comes out and they win this game, and they win the AFC South. Titans, finally have some competition, if you want to say, in their division. And it was real nice to see the Jags win this. Pretty good for them. I don't expect too much out of them come playoff time, but you never know because the playoffs are a different monster. It's a different game, more intensity, more high level play. A lot of teams step it up and all that, especially a lot of teams step it up. What's it called? Compared to the regular season play, Especially like when it wasn't the case for the Jaguars, but when a lot of teams know they're making the playoffs, they kind of coast those final couple weeks of the NFL, and then they ramp back up to what they're used to. Moving on to the Sunday games. Hey, Atlanta, a little too late to try and help out the rest of the league. They beat the Bucs, but it doesn't matter because the Bucs are still making the playoffs because the rest of the NFC South couldn't do much to stop the Bucs from winning this weak division. And I think they said it's the first time Tom Brady's ever... I don't know if it's the first time ever, or like the first time in like years, but like this is the first time I'll say in a while that Tom Brady's ended the season on a losing record. Right? The Bucs are like 8-9, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they're 8-9. The Bills beat the Patriots pretty handily, 35-23. Vikings beat the Bears 29-13, which has some effect, as we'll see later on. Bengals beat the Ravens convincingly, and so now, since they're spoilers for the playoff picture, since they're facing off in the wild card game, it's gonna be at Cincy, since Cincy has the better record and they didn't lose this game. And then the Texans, in Lovie Smith's final game as Texans head coach, he wins them the game and loses and makes the Texans lose the first overall pick in the draft, which now goes to Chicago. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, what difference does that make?" Chicago has Justin Fields, so they'll probably draft some type of defensive line, not defensive line, but they'll draft something that they need, offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver. They're not gonna draft a quarterback. Houston can still get Bryce Young. So repeat what was the first thing I said. Chicago already has a quarterback. Yeah, they won't take Bryce Young, but they can trade the first overall pick, get a huge trade package from a team who needs a quarterback, like Indy, like Seattle could still make a trade up if they want Bryce Young. Who else could realistically make a trade for that number 1 overall pick? I'm trying to think of. Hey, the Lions could do it. You never know. The Lions could be like, hey, we were this close this year, with Jared Goff. Maybe if we make an upgrade or one of the quarterbacks in this class is an upgrade, we can pull it off. The Raiders could even try and pull something off, because of the fact that it seems like they want to move on from Derek Carr. I actually don't know what the Jets draft pick is looking like, or what their draft capital is looking like. But hey, if they don't believe in either of Mike White or Zach Wilson anymore, could easily go and get him. The Saints could try and make a trade up. The Panthers even could try and make a trade up. I'm looking also at other teams. I think that or the Commanders could too if they want to. But what's it called? Oh my gosh, what's his name? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. What the heck? Hold on. Sam Howell. Sam Howell had a good showing out in his final, in the final game of the season for the Commanders. Maybe something for them to watch. You never know. A lot of times, but that's the interesting way that plays out. That the Texans literally could be robbed of the quarterback they've been looking for since they traded away Deshaun Watson. They could be robbed a bit solely because Chicago could be like, we don't really want to, in a sense, quote unquote, reach for something. But it's gonna be an interesting draft, to say the least. The Dolphins beat the Jets 11-6, which was a really weird game, and this unfortunately means that the Dolphins make the playoffs. And if you're asking why we say unfortunately, it's because, do we really trust this Dolphins organization to sit Tua in the playoffs? I don't think we can trust them to sit Tua during the playoffs. And that means they're going to start Tua during playoff football, which, like I said earlier, is a different animal. People aren't holding back for the most part. The game gets rougher, gets even worse than the regular season, gets more grueling because there's something of more importance than winning a certain amount of games on the line. It's winning each and every game to get to the championship game, And I just completely don't trust Miami as a franchise to, take into consideration Tua's health going into this, into the playoffs. But I'll get more into that as we look at the playoff picture. The Panthers beat the Saints. The Steelers beat the Browns. Sorry. The Broncos beat the Chargers. Doesn't affect the Chargers' playoff ranking, but, what we've seen these past 2 weeks out of Russell Wilson is pretty impressive. And, and it's making people really consider that maybe he wasn't the issue this entire season, seeing as the fact that he's able to go out and do all this, the 49ers beat the Cardinals convincingly 38-13. And then, the Commanders. Thank you. Shout out to the Commanders. Beating the Cowboys 26-6. Great showing. Great to see Dallas get embarrassed like that. And then we come to the two controversial... Oh, what the heck? The two controversial games of this final week. And that is the Seahawks against the Rams and the Lions against the Packers. And if you're asking why was that controversial, put simply, the 7th seed in the NFC was between the Seahawks, the Lions, and the Packers. If the Seahawks lost this game against the Rams, this Packers-Lions game would have been, I think it would have been for the 7th seed. Let me check. Yeah, it would have been for the 7th seed. So you kind of take it as, that's why they put this game as the final game of the season, the Sunday Night Football game, in primetime. Because, it could be the battle for the 7th seed. And it's realistic to say that when you look at the past couple of games, and the Seahawks were, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They were 1-6 in their last 7 games. So that could have been like the NFL, we don't expect Seattle to make it, But the controversy comes when if Seattle wins this game, the Packers still have a chance to make that 7th seed if they beat the Lions. But the Lions, thus, are eliminated if the Seahawks win. Because the Seahawks beat the Lions earlier in the year. And so that they would have the tiebreaker over the Lions even if they won this game against against Green Bay. So, in people's minds, they were like, this is unfair to put the Seahawks game earlier in the day because if Seattle wins, Detroit has nothing to play for. They're more than likely to lay down, not play their starters, and risk any injuries going into next season and just allow Green Bay to win and take that 7th seed from Seattle. That was the big thing. And so people were like, this should have been played at the same time and then put, like the 49ers game or the Eagles game in prime time because it's more deciding it's more deciding of the seeding of the playoffs without each game having an effect, where they needed to be played at the same time, or you could have even done Ravens-Bengals if you wanted to. There was a lot of different options, but people kind of forgot one thing, and that is the Lions' mentality of how they've been playing as a team. And Dan Campbell said it himself. We weren't going to let this man just walk into the playoffs. We weren't going to lay down, is basically what he was saying, They went out there and kept it close and finally beat the Packers 20-16, eliminating Aaron Rodgers and the Packers from playoff contention, even though they weren't going to make it because Seattle won earlier in the day. But, it was cool to see, that, that for once, we didn't see a team just lie down because they wanted a better record, better draft pick, or because they knew they weren't playing for nothing. They went out there and played because they didn't want their division rival to make it, It's the same thing I would expect, my team to do, even if we're like 1-15 going into the final week, but we can keep Dallas from going to the playoffs if we were to beat them, in that final game. I would want my team to, go out and try their hardest, And speaking of my team, they were fighting for the number 1 seed, the number 1 seed in both the AFC and the NFC East, and they went out and did it, beating the Giants 22-16. They got out to a pretty sizable lead. If I remember correctly, they went out to I think it was a 10 or I forget what the what the lead was, but they got a pretty decent lead, and then they just kind of let their foot off the gas because they were like, don't try too much because it's the final game of the season. We just want to do enough to secure this 1 seed and get our guys the bye week so that they could rest up, But you wouldn't be needing to do any of this if you just beat Dallas or beat New Orleans, You could have done that a week or two ago and then rested for this game. But instead you're having to play starters. But we went, it was 16-0. Yeah, so it was 16-0. They were playing pretty good, and then the rest of it was just field goals, and then we were slowly allowing the Giants to just kind of get back into this game for whatever reason. Not fully, but we still were allowing them to score, but we did enough to prevent that, and we win the game 22-16. Jalen Hurts didn't get the chance to run that much because we wanted to keep him grounded, didn't want him to get hurt all too much, and the runs he did have were from like broken plays. But he did pretty decent. 229 yards, no throwing touchdowns. He did have an interception. Boston Scott, giant killer, gets his 9 carries, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Wish they would have used the running back team a bit more just to really ice his game, but they did enough. A.J. Brown, 4 catches, 95 yards. Devontae Smith, 7, 67 yards. A.J. Brown breaks the record for most receiving yards in a season by an Eagles player in Eagles franchise history, and I believe Devontae Smith broke the franchise receptions record. I want to say, I believe that's what it was. I can't tell you for sure, but I heard some people talking about it. But so. Real big shout out to those 2 guys who have just come into their own. And, shout out to A.J. Brown for just being an absolute monster for us. He finishes the season with 88 catches for 1,496 yards, was 4 away from 500, dang. 11 touchdowns, tied for 3rd in the NFL. Devontae Smith finishes the year with 95 catches, 1,196 yards, 7 touchdowns. Miles Sanders finishes the season with 250. Wait, is that really the carry number? Dang, that's actually quite a lot. 259 carries. 259 carries for 1,269 yards, 11 touchdowns. I'm trying to see, what did he have in the receiving game? I'm not seeing a whole lot though. I don't know, but still, impressive season from him, truly showing that he can be a lead back. I'll probably have to make like a whole different video about the Eagles offseason, but I'm still kind of wondering if they're going to bring him back or not. I still feel like there's going to be a team out there that might throw him a crazy bag, and so I don't know if the Eagles will match that and bring him back. And then we get to Jalen Hurts, 3,701 yards on the season. 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and then there's the stat. And when it comes to his rushing, I'm trying to find the rushing stats. Wait, okay, yeah, I got the passing stats right here. The rushing stats, he had 165 rushes for 760 yards and 13 touchdowns. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know he had that many rushing touchdowns. Then again, all the quarterback sneaks. Hopefully I'm reading this information right off of ESPN, and I'm not looking like an absolute fool. But yeah, really great game from them. Pretty good game from the defense from when they were holding off at the start. I would have liked to see maybe like in the later quarters some more depth guys get some play just so we could see what we have in them. Like, I don't know. I wish we could have seen a little bit of Kubbi Dean playing, just to see, what he has. But at the same time, the Giants were playing their bench players for the most part. They didn't want to risk anything. But we now look towards the playoffs. Kansas City has the 1 seed in the AFC. The 2 through 7 seed goes as follows. Buffalo, Cincinnati, Jacksonville are your division leaders as well. And we have the Chargers, the Ravens, and the Dolphins making up the final 3 seeds. In the NFC, we have Philly at top with San Francisco, Minnesota, and Tampa being your division leaders, with Dallas, New York, and Seattle being your 5 through 7. And so that means Buffalo plays Miami again. I don't know if I trust the Miami franchise to do what's best for Tua's health, especially seeing as this man has played literally weeks after having, crazy concussions and all that, Just hoping for the best with Tua and hope that they sit him, even though, this is the playoffs and all that. Cincinnati is going against Baltimore. I think Cincinnati takes it. If I'm being and if for the previous one, if it wasn't obvious, I'm pretty sure the Bills are going to take it. I'm pretty sure Cincinnati takes this one. And when it comes to Jacksonville and the Chargers, this one's a much bigger toss-up because Jacksonville did beat them early on in the season. And not only that, we heard the news that Mike Williams might be out. I don't know. This one's a bit tougher. I almost want to side with Jacksonville just because of the fact that they're kind of on a run. They've won the last 5 games in a row. So I think they may be able to pull it off, especially because the Chargers are notorious for not doing the best come playoff time. It is Justin Herbert's first playoff game, but I don't know. I think the division leaders in the AFC find a way to pull it off this week. And then the NFC, I'll be covering the wild card, obviously. But, my Eagles won't be playing. But we have San Francisco going against Seattle. A lot of people are predicting an upset, but I don't know, man. San Francisco's just been on a roll, and not only that, they've decimated Seattle in both their showings pretty much. So I think San Francisco takes that one. Minnesota and New York, the last time they met, it was pretty close. A lot of people are calling an upset with this one. I just can't be too sure of the Giants, but honestly, I think the Giants do find a way to do it, honestly. They only lost the last game by 3. And so it's obviously going to be a shootout and I think that's the biggest point I'll give, I don't know too much about the Giants, even though they're in my division. But again, all I've known is from playing them, but I just think, they found ways to lose to worse teams than Minnesota. So, I don't know. This one's the one that's it's my biggest toss-up of what happens. But I think they pull it off just because, even Vikings fans will tell you that their defense isn't the best. And when you make things a defensive battle, it doesn't really work out in their favor. I think the Giants find a way to win in a shootout somehow. A very close game. And then we have Tampa going against Dallas. Tampa beat them earlier in the season. And obviously, that was the first game of the season. So, the Cowboys have obviously done more since then. But, I don't know, man. They're saying that, Tom Brady has never lost a game to the Cowboys. If anyone's going to, embarrass the Cowboys, it's going to be Tom Brady and the Bucs somehow. I could honestly go either way on this one, but I think maybe Dallas finds a way to pull it off, as much as it makes me go yuck to say that, but I think they pull it off and makes for an interesting matchup because that means they have to go against San Francisco and Philly has to go against New York. And then that would mean, my goodness, that would mean Kansas City against Jacksonville and Buffalo versus Cincinnati. Things are shaping up to be interesting. That's all I'll say. But thank you all for joining for this episode of Game Day. And as always, many things in this life may seem impossible, but if you fight for your dreams will fight for you. Thank you all, and I'll catch y'all next week once the wild card weekend wraps up.